Hey, friends. There we go. The interwebs was fighting with us. Hey, good morning, Donna. Good morning, Amy. Sorry for the delay this morning. We fired up the we fired it up as we always do, and everything locked up about a minute in. And then Facebook wouldn't play with us after that. So, good morning. Thanks for hanging in there and being with us a little bit late. Good morning, John. How are you this morning? Hope you're well. Yes, our Facebook partners here were being a little ornery this morning. So, thank you. We'll give it a minute here for the notification to come up, and then we'll get going. I apologize to everybody for the missing link. I'm hopeful that people will find their way here. Uh, you know, if you're friends with somebody you saw in the chat, let them know we're here. That it started when we fired up at 11:11. I do not know what the disconnect was. Pretty confident it's not on our end, but you know, we've had a pretty incredible run of technology love here. The amount of technology snafus we've had have been pretty small, so we've been lucky. But so we'll see who else can make it along this morning, and we will get ourselves up and going. Good morning. Good morning. Give it a little bit more time and go. I hope everybody's doing all right on this lovely day. The beautiful feeling of spring. Even though it's been chilly lately, it's still hanging on. We will see. I'm not quite sure that March is living up to its name here. That it is going to go out like a lamb, but we'll see. We'll hope for that for sure as we continue. So, good morning, everybody. All right, we'll get heading along here. So, again, my apologies for the technical snafu. As soon as we fired up, the live stream locked up, and it took us a good while to get it back. So it is part of the joy of being live that we're always contending with here. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to this 11:11 at a little later today, but that on the 30th day of March. It is the 30th day of March, friends. And so I am glad that each one of you are here, and I hope that if you got lost in the shuffle here, you'll catch us a little later in the day. But know that you're a part of this journey, and you're especially a part of this journey this week, because this week is Holy Week. That last Sunday was Palm Sunday, and that we're on this journey from Palm Sunday through the cleansing of the temple, through the time at Bethany, to the encounter on the Mount of Olives, to the gathering with his friends for dinner, to betrayal, to the cross, to death, to resurrection on Easter Sunday. This story is one of the most, it occupies more space in the Gospels than anything else. You know, if you take the whole Gospel story, you lay it all out, and that if we take each one of the stories and the amount of time that is calculated in each story, what we find is that there is really only about 3 weeks of Jesus's life. Now, we know his ministry was about 3 years. That's about what we have recorded. But if you take all the stories and you say, well, that story took about half a day or whatever, you add them all up, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, all of them, It's about 3 weeks of details about Jesus' life. That's what we have. Now, of those 3 weeks, one entire week is what happens this week on Holy Week. This is we cannot overemphasize the power of what we are encountering in the story of this week and in the journey of Jesus over this week. We cannot overemphasize it. It has been, and it continues to be, the single most changing week of all of the world. It's the single week that changed the world more than any other week. How many Christians are there in the world? How many billion Christians are there in the world? How many hearts have been affected over the course of lifetimes and eons about what, not about the teachings of Jesus, not just, Jesus was a good guy and he did some good things. Like, there's a lot of good guys and have done a lot of good things that have taught a lot of wisdom and a lot of sort of stuff. That it's what happens this week. And so what I want to do in our 11:11s and on today and then on tomorrow and the next day is I want to talk about the story of this week, so that we can fill in the blanks. That we had Palm Sunday on Sunday, but we can begin to follow along and perhaps tease out this thread of what happens, because it's the single greatest week in creation. It is. I mean, by any measure, it's the single greatest week of creation. It changes everything for humanity. Now, it takes a little time, decades and eons and centuries, but we're still talking about it, and millions of us, billions of us are still talking about it, the effect of what happened this week. And that's where I want to begin. So, on Sunday was the triumphal entry into Jerusalem. Jesus rides on a donkey through the Lamb's Gate. If you want to hear an outstanding sermon breaking that down, you can go back and watch my sermon from this Sunday. So, outstanding, maybe like outstanding in the field or something. I don't know, like a hay field or something. But it is because I actually do that, spend the time in this sermon breaking out what happens as Jesus goes through the sheep's gate. And I think if you're interested, it's worth your time to go back and listen to that. So that was Jesus. And Jesus goes in, and what he does, he looks around, checks out what's going on for Passover. Remember, it's Passover, so there's a huge crush of people in Jerusalem, 10 times more people than normal that have come for the Passover celebration at the temple. And he checks it out. He checks out the scene. He's like, hey, what's going on? Hey, how do you get? So, and then he goes back to Bethany. Now, Bethany is this very special place. And we can't talk about Holy Week without talking about Bethany. And we all need a Bethany, friends. We all need a Bethany. Bethany becomes Jesus' home base. It is the home of Mary and Martha and Lazarus, Jesus' very, very, very good friends, who are not his disciples, who are not his followers necessarily, though Mary sits at his feet and Martha weeps with him and complains to him as she might a teacher. But he is their friend, and he goes to their house. And he stays there when he's near Jerusalem. So he goes back out. He leaves Jerusalem after this triumphal entry. He leaves Jerusalem, comes back, and spends the night in Bethany with his friends. Now, if you remember, he had just resurrected Lazarus from the dead. So they probably had a few things to talk about. So they come back in the morning, and they return on Monday morning to Jerusalem. He begins the journey on into Jerusalem. Now, along the way, there is this fig tree, and he looks up at the fig tree and he curses the fig tree. You see, Jesus is hungry for a fig. He's hungry. He wants a fig, and the tree has no figs. But the thing is about the tree that has no figs, it's not even supposed to have figs. It's not the season for figs. So, and many people have read this and they see like, oh, this is kind of unfair about Jesus's what Jesus is doing. But the fig tree becomes this because and it really only makes sense when we look at this whole story about what's about to happen, because beforehand it begins to kind of be a big question like, what's this fig tree story? He encounters the fig tree and he looks for fruit. And he looks for fruit. He looks for that which would feed the world, that which would feed and nourish, that which would be a gift to the world, that which would be yumminess on the lips. And not just and so this tree becomes a metaphor for the people of Israel that he's contending with right now, the people at the temple that he's about to go visit. Because remember, he just checked it out yesterday. He checked out the scene, and we get the sense he didn't like what he saw happening in Jerusalem at the time. Jesus has a problem here. And in many ways, this week is the beginning of the great unveiling of Jesus. If you remember any of the Gospels, like Jesus is always walking around doing something special and then saying, "Don't tell anybody about it." He'll heal somebody, "Don't tell anybody about it." But a little earlier, when he resurrected Lazarus in front of everybody. Everybody and their brother, all of the pilgrims streaming through Bethany that were coming through. Jesus resurrects Lazarus right there and says, and he even yells it across the yard. He doesn't even go into the tomb to get Lazarus. He yells at Lazarus. He makes a spectacle out of the resurrection of Lazarus. This is why all the crowds show up to welcome him in triumph, because it's a kind of a big deal. So Jesus has made this. Jesus has now gone from incognito ministry that he's done over the past 3 years to now he's making a splash. Now he is letting his colors, his freak flag fly, and he is saying, "Here I am, and I'm going to tell you what I think about things." And so he's walking from Bethany after a great night on Monday, after a great night with Mary and Martha and Lazarus, their house, and he sees this fig tree. Now, he loved Martha's cooking. Remember, he loved Martha's cooking, so he wasn't necessarily hungry, or maybe he was, but that we don't get the sense of that. He wants a fig, and he looks at them, and there's no figs on the tree. The season was not for figs, and yet he curses the tree, and the tree withers and dies right down to the root. When Jesus is looking at the world as it is, it wasn't feeding anybody. The temple sacrifice, the blood that would run in the streets, the subjugation to the Roman Empire, the struggle that they were all embroiled in, was offering nothing about the simple goodness of God, the simple love of one person for another, the compassion and the ethos, and the embodiment of the really real in the world. And Jesus comes to say, their time has passed. They are no longer in season. This way of trying to connect with God through blood and treasure doesn't work anymore. And I am the embodiment of that to tell you that it does not. And this is the image of the cursing of this tree. And so he goes on after this little foretaste of what's about to come, and he goes into the temple, and this is one of the famous scenes of Jesus cleansing the temple. So he goes on Sunday, he clears out the temple. On Monday he shows up, and what does he do? He checks out the temple on Sunday, and on Monday he shows up and sees the money changers at work, sees all of the bankers in the courtyard making their filthy lucre, as the Bible tells us, and says, and says, that's it, and grabs the bullwhip and grabs the chair and chases them out. Now, it's a great mystery. One of the great mysteries of this is, how does this work? Because there is a temple guard. There's cops there. They have their own little rent-a-cops at the temple. And so how did Jesus pull this off? Now, there's all kinds of speculation about that, and I won't go into that now. But to understand that he really should have been tackled and laid and wrestled down. Now, some people say it's because they were afraid of the crowds. Other people say for other reasons. But whatever the reason, he's got enough cachet. He's got enough gravitas. He's got enough power at that point to be able to disrupt the entire festival of Passover. Because Passover, now he doesn't stop it, but he just certainly disrupts it. And again, remember, this is big money. This is where the all of the temple and the temple structure and the priests and even the Romans make their money. They're on the sacrifices of the people that would come to be in relationship with God in the Passover sacrifice. Jesus shows up and blows that system apart on Monday. He says, my temple will be a house of prayer, but you have turned it into a den of thieves. You see how that little cursing of the fig tree now is this little foretaste of, like, you're not giving any fruit. You're not. And when I say fruit, it's like you're not giving any spiritual, like nobody's being edified in their heart or enlivened in their mind. They're not offering work and alms and love to the world. They're not caring for each other. They're trapped in this system of blood and sacrifice and pain, which is nothing but extraction of wealth and resources for more blood and taxes and pain. And he says, no, there's a spiritual kingdom here that will be a house of prayer, a house of talking to God, a house of connection. And you all have turned it into a place of thievery. And so that Monday night, he goes back and he heads back to Bethany and hangs out with Mary and Martha and Lazarus again. So what a dinner party that must have been. And so now here we are on Tuesday. Oh, coffee good. Here we are on Tuesday. Jesus and his disciples return to Jerusalem again. So he turns back around. They head back in and they pass the withered fig tree. And Jesus looks at it and he says, back to the temple. And the religious leaders there, well, they're upset. Hard to imagine, right? Like they just lost a lot of money yesterday in people trying to set up their sacrifice, pay for their sacrifice, exchange their currency, and with a little vig on the side, of course. And so they've had the night too to start plotting, and so they set a trap for him, and they're trying to get Jesus. So today, they are working to ambush Jesus and put him under arrest. This is when it begins. The betrayal begins. Jesus' words in Matthew when he we don't know that he knows, but we know that he knows, kind of thing. And he looks and he's at the spiritual authorities of the day. He's at the priests and the Pharisees. And he says, you blind guides, you whitewashed tombs, beautiful on the outside. And the Temple of Solomon was by all reports an amazing structure. Beautiful on the outside, but filled on the inside with dead people's bones. All sorts of impurity. Outwardly, you look like religious people, but inwardly, your hearts are filled with hypocrisy and lawlessness. Snakes, sons of vipers, how will you escape the judgment of hell. So much for the nice, kind, little, fuzzy-headed Jesus that we learned in Sunday school. The guy that shows up on Sunday and that we've been journeying with these past 48 hours, remember, we have 3 weeks of Jesus' life. That's what we've got. That's what we really have. And in the text, now it spans over the course of 3 years of his ministry, but we have 3 weeks recorded in the Gospels. This week, he's not showing himself as this kind of fuzzy, cuddly little guy teacher who offers little whimsical ideas that might improve your life, kind of the little, kind and fuzzy divine little Tony Robbins. No. He looks at the powers that be and he picks a fight with them. Snakes, sons of vipers, he calls them. And we got to understand what this is. There was actually a hand motion in those days when the people of Jerusalem were all assembled. Like, we're talking 1,000 people. That there was a hand motion. And we don't know what the hand motion was. It could have been something like a flick or something like that. But there was a hand motion that the rabbis and the chief priests could do that would silence a crowd like that. Thousands of people, silence it like that. They had that kind of power, that if they did this hand motion, everybody stopped talking. That's what we're talking about. They're not really accustomed to being called snakes and sons of vipers. Like, that doesn't go well. They're not suggested that they need to escape the judgment of hell. These are the high of the high. So later that afternoon, after this encounter and this ambush that he manages to escape, as he often does, that he goes to the Mount of Olives and he looks over the city and he cries. He weeps. And he gives this very dark second coming and final judgment prophecy in parable. But really, it is about the weeping and the breaking down of what he sees that's breaking down. Once he returns again to Bethany that night. Also, that day is when Judas slips away to begin to plot with the Sanhedrin, the gathering of the chief priests, to betray Jesus. So remember, and this is the thing, Judas does this because because he's frustrated that Jesus didn't take up arms and try and defeat the Romans when he entered on Sunday. Judas is frustrated. Remember, Judas is the guy he's the guy with the money belt. He's the guy with he's the treasurer of the disciples. He carries the money bag. And he sees that they have resources. They could get some swords. They've got this huge crowd that are all excited about the fact that he just worked this miracle and resurrected this guy. So if I go stab a Roman, maybe he'll resurrect me. Like, we're talking about this atmosphere of violent foment that is right on the edge. And Judas is frustrated that Jesus won't take up the sword and get rid of these people who have been oppressing the Jews for 100 years. Will you not defend us, Jesus? This is what Judas is mad about. And this is why he goes to the Sanhedrin and says, this guy was not what I thought he was. But little does Judas know there's a whole nother journey and a whole nother kingdom being established. The kingdom beyond kingdoms, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. That's how today ends, with his discourse on Olivet, on the Mount of Olives, and the prophecy about the destruction in Matthew. And so we'll pick up our story tomorrow at 11:11. Hopefully, we'll have a little better technological success. But we'll pick up our story tomorrow about what happens on Holy Wednesday. All right, friends. I hope you have a great day. I'm sorry for our technical difficulties. If you have the opportunity, do send this around to some of our groups so that they might know we've found our way back here. I am so glad for those of you, Amy and Donna and John, and those of you who are here with us this morning for having overcome the technical difficulties with us. Thanks for journeying with us. I hope you'll share this story and stay with the story, because to me, Easter, as powerful and as magnificent as it is truly makes its best sense when we walk this journey with Jesus over this week. Again, remember, we have 3 weeks of recorded of Jesus' life over the 3 years of his ministry, and we have 1 whole week recorded right now. That's the power of it. That's the importance of it. This week that changed the planet forever. All right, friends, grace and peace to you, and we'll find out what happens to our friend Jesus tomorrow. Peace and grace, y'all.